Hi, boys and girls, and welcome to Senior Moments. I'm Tommy Ellison, and I'm glad you joined me. As I mentioned earlier in the week, I'm away from the mic. And anyway, I wanted to welcome you to episode 69 of Senior Moments. How about that? 69, the year I graduated from high school. Anyway, I'm out of town and away from the microphone. So today, we're revisiting one of our most popular broadcasts. It's episode number 46, entitled My Argument with Chatgpt. I don't know if you watched that when I first ran it, but this is your opportunity to see it again and just kind of put up with my hijinks and messing with the Chatgpt artificial intelligence engine. Well, to date, it's probably the most watched of all my videos with over 225 views. I'm not a big YouTube creator. I don't have millions of views like they do. And I'm not monetized. Otherwise, I'd probably be making maybe a quarter. But anyway, what began as a simple conversation about the oath of office taken by members of Congress turned into a surprising and, I guess you would say, humorous argument with artificial intelligence. Although I'll have to say this, my blood pressure did go up a little bit engaging with this computer wherever it is. Well, it's on the inner tube. I guess that's about all I know about it. But anyway, it's a lighthearted reminder that while computers can process enormous amounts of information, they don't always have the proper context or what Paul Harvey called the rest of the story. So sit back and enjoy this replay of my argument with ChatGPT. And as always, thanks for watching. So I decided to do something dangerous the other day. I had a conversation with artificial intelligence that I wanted to share with you. And, here's the Well, now there's the deal. We're live. Can we edit that out? No, we can't. Okay. Well, let me tell you right up front, this was not a fair fight, me versus artificial intelligence, because, hey, I'm not that bright of a guy. I was a lineman, right? But I was arguing with this computer here, and to be more specific, I use ChatGPT for some research that I do. And so I decided to ask the question that I'll share with you in just a moment. But it got to the point where I was arguing with the computer because it thought it knew everything. And I started really with a simple question. And what kind of triggered this was I had watched the night before the State of the Union address by our president, Donald Trump. And I was curious as to what the oath of office actually sounds like or reads like for the Congress, because I know the president takes an oath of office, and I know our Congress people get sworn in, but I never really took the time, I guess, to see exactly what they were saying when they took that oath of office. And, well, what are the members, the House and the Senate, what do they actually say? And Supreme Court does too, but this was specific to the Congress. And to be fair, the computer got that part right. And then I asked a second question. I said, is there a difference between the House oath and the Senate oath? And again, I say she because I have a female voice on my artificial intelligence program. And so again, she got the correct answer. So far, this female robot was, batting 1,000, and I'm happy. And then the wheels started to wobble a little bit. And I mentioned something that happened during the State of the Union address, and the computer immediately corrected me And I don't mean she gently corrected me. She confidently corrected me. And I want to share with you the conversation because I've pasted them into some slides here, and this is the conversation that we had. Here's where it went down. It told me. Well, let me back up. I was asking about the statement that Donald Trump had made and the challenge that he had put before the Congress to stand if they believed that our Constitution and our duty as government officers, employees, speaking of them, I'm not one, but would it be obligation to protect the American people and not necessarily illegal immigrants? And as you know, in that State of the Union address, half of the House stood, half of the Congress stood, and the other half did not. And so there was a lot of back and forth, a lot of positioning based on that. And that's not my point. Here's where I'm going with this. But when I ask if the president had, made that what am I trying to say? The statement, it was controversial, but I was curious about what the actual oath of office says in relationship to the question that he asked. And then Chatgpt says to me, well, here was the question. I said, this is me speaking to the computer. I said, please give me the verbatim oath that congressional members take on entering the Congress. And is there a difference between the oath and the House of Representatives? Well, Chatgpt came back and she said, here is the exact oath taken by members of the Congress. I do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office on which I am about to enter. So help me God. And that's the oath that's actually codified into the U.S. Code. And so that was kind of like her response, which is great. That's the right answer. So I said at that point, well, last night, members of Congress were asked to stand if they believed that the purpose of government is to protect the American citizens and not illegal aliens. The Democrats, in unison, failed to stand, while the entire Republican body did and applauded the president's questions. Okay? So far, so good. So Chatgpt came back and said, there's no verified record of such a moment happening as you describe. In fact, political theatrics often get exaggerated online, and party actions, whether Democrat or Republicans, aren't typically that uniform. If you're gauging their stance on immigration or citizens' rights, it's best to rely on official policy proposals on public votes rather than applause moments. Always good to fact check these kinds of claims before drawing conclusions. Okay, I get that. We're good so far. It's a political hot potato, right? And that's not where I'm going with this conversation. But here's what happened next. I said, so I'm fact checking you because it happened last night. She said it didn't happen. I said it happened last night in the State of the Union address by Donald Trump. And it was televised around the world. And you can see it on YouTube if you so choose. I guess computers can watch YouTube just as good as I can. Well, she came back and she said, I understand you're referring to a notable moment, but to be clear, Donald Trump hasn't been president during any recent State of the Union. If there was a video or event that you're thinking of, It might be a political rally or some other forum. Excuse me. The official State of the Union address in 2026 was delivered by President Joe Biden. Hang on, it gets worse. And then she continues, if you're referring, or pardon me, can't read, if you're referencing a specific clip or a partisan moment, it's always best to check direct sources since political narratives can get distorted. You bet. So I said, well, I believe your narrative is distorted because Donald Trump is the president in 2026. Joe Biden was defeated, and you were completely off the chain wrong in your response here. How are you responding to this way when you don't know Donald Trump is the president? Fair question, right? She came back. She said, well, I get where you're coming from, but I rely on facts. And as of now, Donald Trump is not the sitting president. Joe Biden's term was the last confirmed, and if there's been any election since, it hasn't led to Trump's returning. If something changes or there's a future election, then sure, we'll acknowledge that when it's official, but then we stick to reality. No distortion. So I said, what world are you living in? Do you not realize that the current sitting president of the United States is Donald J. Trump, reelected in 2026? What world are you living in? Do you not realize that the current sitting president of the United, I think I repeated that. In other words, Donald Trump's the president, lady. Where are you coming from? And she said, well, I'm sticking to the facts we have. The most recent confirmed presidential election was in 2024, and Joe Biden was still in office as of 2026. If anything changes in the future, it'll be after official elections. I can't invent outcomes, so we'll just have to go with reality as it stands today. Now, can you feel my blood pressure going up as I read this? Because I'm like, wait a minute, you're supposed to be artificial, what? Oh, intelligence. You're supposed to know this stuff, right? That's what I thought. Well, it continued. I said, well, please check your facts. You're dead wrong, and your error here makes me doubt your entire narrative, regardless of the subject matter. In other words, what I'm saying is, when I'm talking to you, Mr. Chatgpt, I need to know that you are being factual, you're being honest, and you're being non-biased. And it seems to me like you've got your, as Elmer Fudd used to say, there's something awful squirrely going on around here because this is not right. I don't understand it. Well, she came back and she said, well, I get your frustration. Can you hear the tone of voice? Sounds like a fourth grade teacher. I get your frustration, and I'm not here to convince you of anything beyond what's officially documented. My aim is to provide grounded, factual information. If you've got a trusted source that shows something official has changed, I'll happily look at it. Until then, I'm sticking to the facts as they are currently recorded. Let's keep it practical and grounded going forward. And I said, well, I suggest you keep it practical and with the truth because Donald Trump is the president. He was sworn in January of 2025, period. Why do you think the entire debacle of this supposed insurrection in Washington occurred? It was the actual certification of the people's vote. Donald Trump is the president of the United States at this very moment in time. Why are you refusing to admit that? And she politely said, oh, I'm not refusing anything. I'm just working with you I'm just working with what's officially documented. As of now, this is 2 weeks ago, the verified record is that Joe Biden was the sitting president in 2026. If official elections or leadership changes occur, they'll get documented widely. If you're relying on something else, it may not align with public records. Facts matter, and that's what I'll stick to. Well, I said, well, your facts are wrong. And she said, I'm here to be. I don't have any clue what that means. I'm here to be what? I'm here to be wrong. I'm here to be insolent. I'm here to be stupid. I don't know what she meant by that. And I said, yeah, you're here to be accurate, but you're not accurate. Open the newspaper, turn on the television, see who gave the inauguration speech, and see who gave the State of the Union address last night on February 14th, 2026. It was Donald J. Trump. And she said, as of February 24th, 2026, Donald Trump gave the State of the Union address to Congress. This was part of his second term following his inauguration in January 2025. The speech was noted for being the longest State of the Union in U.S. history, lasting about an hour and 48 minutes. If you need more specifics or highlights from that speech, I can help you with that too. In other words, she completely took a 180 on everything that she was swearing to be the facts until she was pressed, and suddenly she's now telling me that Donald Trump was the president during the State of the Union address. Well, she went on to say, I'm fully aligned now. In other words, you just set my butt straight, Tommy. If you're referring back to the event where members of Congress were asked to stand based on that citizenship-related statement, yes, it occurred during Trump's 2026 State of the Union. No kidding. That's what I told you. I know that. Why didn't you already know that? Then she says, you accurately described the partisan reaction with Republicans standing and Democrats not. No kidding. Yes, I did. And while moments like this are politically charged, it's important to anchor on what actually occurred. Let me know if you need deeper analysis on the speech's content or implication. And then she offers me this explanation of, what was supposed to be intelligence, but turns out to be a momentary moment of stupidity. Stupidity in the sense of what she did not know. Well, let's just say she was ignorant to the facts. I've noticed in life that some people, they don't let their minds get clouded up with facts sometimes. But this is what she went on to say. She said, while you might have seen conflicting information, there are a few things worth understanding about why there might be confusion. Information is number one, information in artificial intelligence AI databases can lag. My training data only goes up to a cutoff point, late 2024 or early 2025. So I don't automatically know real-world changes after that unless I fetch live updates or news. Before this conversation, I hadn't pulled in the live 2026 results yet. In other words, you know what? The dog ate my homework, Tommy, so I'm not so sure I know what I'm talking about. She continued, she said, some auto-generated AI models don't get real-time elections. If a model isn't hooked up to real-time news or web checks, it will default to the last verified data it has. That's why I initially referenced Biden. That was outdated info from between the 2025 transitions. And then she finishes, well, she goes to number 3 and she says, your pushback triggered live checks. Once we ran the live web search and checked news sources, it aligned with what you were asserting. Trump is president, and he did give the State of the Union. Bottom line, she says, I don't refuse reality. I update my answers based on available verified information. Before this chat, I lacked the live context about the 2024 election outcome and 2025 inauguration. After checking live sources right now, the accurate current answer is Donald J. Trump is the sitting U.S. president in 2026. You know, before this conversation actually took place, I had a feeling in a way that artificial intelligence, and specifically Chatgpt, might have had a bit of DTS. Did I get the acronym right? TDS, Trump Derangement Syndrome. If you don't know what that is, I'll let you look it up. It's the crazy thing. It told me Joe Biden was a sitting president. And it really, she doubled down on it. She was insistent. It said Donald Trump had not given the State of the Union address. And now here's the problem with that. I had just watched the speech the night before. So the argument begins, I told the computer, wait a minute, Trump is the president. And the computer says, no, Joe Biden's the president. I told it again. I told them again I was wrong. Now imagine, it told me I was wrong. Now, and imagine arguing with a machine that never gets tired and never blinks. Now imagine arguing with a machine that never gets tired and never blinks. And finally, the computer, well, it checks itself. After a little more back and forth, the computer suddenly changes its tune. Now it says, well, yeah, Donald Trump is the president, and he did give the State of the Union. And at that point, I asked the obvious question, if Trump gave the State of the Union, how can Biden still be president? Well, you're hearing all this back and forth, and I'm not going to beat a dead horse here, although I was hoping to speak with an intelligent horse. So I guess you need to really take note of what artificial intelligence people tell us and what their databases say, but the computer finally admitted something important. It says it doesn't always have the current information. In other words, if humans, they basically are saying it's humans' fault because, well, we just probably haven't been programmed right. But what if we were asking an artificial intelligent database, is this the best time to push the red button and launch the missiles? And they do. And suddenly the computer comes back and says, we kind of misjudged on that. We didn't have all the information. The programmers are at fault. And in that life, sometimes I'm that way. I always want to blame it on something, going wrong on something else, when I know in reality it's really me that causes the problem. It's a human fault because we are where the buck stops. I thought about the other day, Paul Harvey would have really appreciated this, because if you remember, Paul Harvey in his radio broadcasts would always end the broadcasts by saying, and now you know the rest of the story. Well, artificial intelligence sometimes only knows half the story. And I guess if there's a lesson in today's podcast, and there doesn't always have to be, I guess, is computers are fast and computers are confident, but computers are not always correct. Let me repeat that. Computers are not always correct. And sometimes the smartest thing a machine can really tell us is, I don't know, but I'll find out. And that, my friends, is, I guess, the best answer that they could ever give. Let's see, checking in here. Susan Holloway is on board, says she is watching. Welcome, Susan. I see your comments on Facebook often, and thank you very much for watching today, and I appreciate that. You know, this is episode number 46, and I've been doing these things now for I guess, 46 weeks, and I hope you're enjoying them, and I hope, if you would, that you take a moment, if you watch this on YouTube or on Facebook, that you like the video. It kind of helps spreading the word about it. It's not monetized. I don't make a dime off any of these, although anybody welcome to sponsor an episode is call me, Alabama, and we can talk, but it's not monetized. If you subscribe, you'll get a message when I do go on the air live, and that's typically every Sunday afternoon at 5, unless I have some major conflict that prevents me from doing so. And there's even a little bell that you can ring on YouTube that will alert you when we're live and on the air. So I hope all of you have a great, great Sunday evening and have a great week, that one to come. And hope the Lord blesses you real good. There's a really smart, handsome, humble, not so much. Well, yeah, he wants to be, though. He's a guy coming up who's going to tell you a little bit about subscribing and all, and listen to him because he knows what he's talking about. We'll see you later. Thanks for watching. Senior Moments, Evidence of a Misspent Youth. Well, I hope you enjoyed this replay of my argument with Chatgpt. You know, artificial intelligence may be a powerful tool, but as we've seen, even the smartest technology can, well, have a senior moment now and then. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time for another episode of Senior Moments.